Li Jihan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from under the massive fusion engine. The asteroid mining station was always hot, but today felt worse than usual. He had been working on the new drive system for 3 weeks straight, trying to make the cargo ships run faster and use less fuel. "Hey Jihan," called his friend Kim Dae-hyun from across the workshop. "Come look at this." Jihan walked over to where Dae-hyun stood near the communication console. His friend's face looked worried. On the screen was Captain Park Min-ju from the defense station. "What's wrong?" Jihan asked. Captain Park's voice came through the speakers. "We have a situation. A huge fleet just appeared at the edge of our system. They're not attacking, but they're definitely not human ships." Jihan felt his stomach drop. Alien contact was rare, and it usually meant trouble. "How big is huge?" "Over 200 ships. Some of them are bigger than our space stations." Captain Park paused. "They're asking for someone specific. They want Li Jihan from the asteroid mining colony." Dae-hyun looked at his friend with wide eyes. "They want you? Why would aliens want you?" Jihan shook his head. "I have no idea. I've never met any aliens in my life." "Well, they seem to know you," Captain Park continued. "They sent a formal message. Says they represent something called the Stellar Federation. They want you to come with them immediately." "That's crazy," Jihan said. "I'm just an engineer. I fix engines and design better fuel systems. Why would a galactic empire want me?" The communication console beeped again. This time a different voice came through. Definitely not human, but speaking perfect Korean. "Greetings, Li Jihan of Earth Colony New Sejong. I am Commander Kelu of the Stellar Federation Fleet. Our Queen has sent us to bring you home to fulfill your sacred promise." "Sacred promise?" Jihan looked confused. "What sacred promise?" "The marriage contract you made 20 years ago with Queen Nari when you were both children." Jihan's mouth fell open. "Marriage contract? I don't remember any marriage contract, and I definitely don't remember knowing anyone named Nari." Commander Kelu's voice remained calm. "Your memory may have been affected by trauma. We have complete records of the promise ceremony. When you were 12 years old, you and the Queen promised to marry each other when you grew up." Dae-hyun grabbed Jihan's arm. "This is insane. You can't seriously be considering going with them." Jihan's mind raced. He tried to remember being 12 years old on New Sejong. His family had been farmers back then, growing crops in the underground caves. It was a simple life. He remembered playing in the fields, helping his parents, going to the small school. But he couldn't remember any alien friends. "I think there's been a mistake," Jihan said to the communication console. "I never met any aliens when I was a kid. I grew up on a farming colony. There were no aliens there. Queen Nari was disguised as a human child at the time," Commander Kelu explained. "Her ship crashed near your colony. Your family helped her recover. You became close friends for 2 years before we found her." Suddenly, Jihan felt a strange feeling in his chest. There was something familiar about the name Nari, but he couldn't quite remember what. "Even if that's true," he said, "why would childhood promises matter to a galactic queen?" "In our culture, promises made in childhood are the most sacred of all bonds. They represent pure intentions before the world changes us. Queen Nari has never forgotten your promise. She has waited 20 years for you to be ready to fulfill it." Captain Park's voice came back on the line. "Jihan, you don't have to go anywhere. We can protect you here." Commander Kelu spoke again, this time with more authority. "Captain Park, with respect, your entire defense fleet has maybe 50 ships. We have brought 200, but we are not here to threaten anyone. We are here because our queen made a promise to a human child and she intends to keep it. We hope Li Jihan will honor his promise as well." Jihan sat down heavily in a chair. This was too much to process. "What happens if I don't come with you?" "Nothing bad will happen to you or your people," Commander Kelu said. "But our queen will be very sad. She has built her entire life around the promise you made together. She became a ruler partly so she would be worthy of marrying you. She became a queen because of me?" Jihan couldn't believe it. Queen Nari united over 10,000 star systems under the Stellar Federation. She brought peace to our region of the galaxy. She did all of this while remembering the kind human boy who promised to be her husband. Daehyun whispered to his friend. This sounds like a fairy tale. Queens don't wait 20 years for farm boys. But something inside Jihan was starting to remember flashes of memory, a girl with sad eyes, someone who seemed different from the other kids, long conversations under the artificial stars of the colony's dome. If I come with you, Jihan said slowly, what exactly are you expecting me to do? Simply, meet with Queen Nari again, Commander Kelu replied. Talk to her. Remember your friendship. Decide if you want to honor the promise you made as children. If you choose not to marry her, she will understand, but she hopes you will at least give her a chance to remind you why you cared about each other. Captain Park cut in again. Jihan, think about this carefully. You'd be going to an alien empire. We might never see you again. Jihan looked at his friend Daehyun, then at the half-finished engine he'd been working on. His life here was quiet and predictable. He fixed things. He solved problems. He went home to his small apartment and read technical manuals. It was a good life, but it wasn't exciting. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he could almost remember a girl who had been important to him. A girl who had needed a friend and who had promised to always remember him. How long would this take? He asked. The journey to our capital world takes 2 weeks, Commander Kelu said. After that, it depends on you and the Queen. Jihan took a deep breath. Okay, I'll come with you. But I want my friend Daehyun to come too. Of course, Queen Nari specifically requested that you bring anyone you trust. She wants you to feel safe and comfortable. As Jihan packed his few belongings, he wondered what he was getting himself into. Somewhere out there was a woman who claimed to love him, who had become the most powerful person in the galaxy, and who had been waiting 20 years for him to keep a promise he couldn't even remember making. It sounded impossible. But deep in his heart, something told him it might actually be true. The Federation ship was unlike anything Jihan had ever seen. The corridors were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, and the walls seemed to glow with soft light that came from nowhere. Everything was smooth and curved, like the inside of a giant shell. Commander Kelu looked human except for his silver eyes and the way he moved too gracefully. He had assigned Jihan and Daehyun to comfortable rooms and told them they were free to explore the ship. This is incredible, Daehyun whispered as they walked through what the aliens called a garden deck. Plants from dozens of different worlds grew together in impossible combinations, some floating in midair, others growing downward from the ceiling. Jihan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Ever since they had left the asteroid colony, he had been having strange dreams. Images of a girl with dark hair and sad eyes, memories of playing hide-and-seek in the crop fields, the feeling of holding someone's hand while watching the stars through the colony's dome. Sir Jihan, Commander Kelu appeared beside them. The Queen has requested that we help you remember your time together. If you agree, our medical team can safely restore the memories that were blocked. Blocked? Jihan turned to face the alien commander. What do you mean blocked? When Queen Nari left your world, she was very upset. Her emotions were so strong that they affected your mind. To protect you from the pain of losing her, your brain hid those memories away. Daehyun stepped closer to his friend. That sounds dangerous. What if something goes wrong? Commander Kelu's silver eyes were kind. We have done this procedure many times. It is completely safe. But we will not force you. The choice is yours. Jihan thought about it. Part of him was afraid of what he might remember, but another part of him needed to know the truth. Okay, let's do it. The medical bay was filled with machines that hummed softly. Alien doctors with gentle hands attached small devices to Jihan's head. He felt a warm, tingling sensation, and then the memories came flooding back. Nari. She had called herself Nari, but that wasn't her real name. Her real name was something he couldn't pronounce, from a language that sounded like music and wind, chimes. She had crashed in the forest near his family's farm when he was 12 years old. He remembered finding her ship, a small silver pod hidden among the trees. She had been hurt and scared, taking the shape of a human girl about his age because she thought it would help her survive. His parents had wanted to report the crash, but Jihan had convinced them to help her instead. For 2 years, she had lived with them. Officially, she was a distant relative from another colony. She learned to act human, to eat human food, to laugh at human jokes. But late at night, when they snuck out to look at the stars, she would tell him stories about other worlds and the creatures that lived there. She had been running away from her own people, she explained. Her family wanted her to marry someone she didn't like, someone cruel and controlling. She had stolen a ship and escaped, but they would find her eventually. When they come for me, she had said one night while they sat on the hill overlooking the farms, I want you to know that these have been the happiest years of my life. They won't find you, 12-year-old Jihan had promised. And even if they do, I'll protect you. She had smiled sadly. You're sweet, Jihan, but you can't fight an entire space fleet. Then come with me, he had said without thinking. When we're older, we'll get married and go somewhere they can't find us. She had looked at him with those sad, dark eyes. Do you really mean that? Of course I do, I promise. They had sealed the promise the way children do, with a kiss on the cheek and their hands pressed together. 2 weeks later, the Federation ships had found her. Jihan remembered the day they came. Huge vessels that blocked out the sun, soldiers in shining armor who spoke in voices like thunder. But they hadn't come to punish her. They had come to take her home because her father had died and she was now the heir to the throne. I have to go, she had told him, tears streaming down her face. But I'll come back for you, I promise. When I'm old enough to rule on my own, when I'm strong enough to make my own choices, I'll come back and we'll get married just like we promised. I'll wait for you, Jihan had said, though he didn't really understand what was happening. She had kissed him goodbye, a real kiss this time, and then she was gone. The next morning, Jihan woke up with only vague memories of a friend who had moved away. His parents never spoke of her again, and gradually, he forgot she had ever existed. But she hadn't forgotten him. The memories faded, and Jihan opened his eyes. He was back in the medical bay, but now everything made sense. Daehyun was holding his shoulder, looking worried. Are you okay? His friend asked. Jihan nodded slowly. I remember her now. I remember all of it. Commander Kelu stepped forward. Queen Nari has been preparing for your reunion for many years. She learned everything she could about human culture and customs. She studied your language, your history, your literature. She wanted to be worthy of the boy who showed her kindness when she needed it most. She's really a queen now? Jihan asked. The most powerful ruler in our region of the galaxy, Commander Kelu confirmed. She united thousands of worlds that had been fighting for centuries. She brought peace through diplomacy instead of war. She created laws that protect smaller species from being bullied by larger ones. She is beloved by her people. Jihan felt overwhelmed. The scared girl he had known was now one of the most important people in the galaxy. And she still wants to marry me? I'm just an engineer from a mining colony. Commander Kelu smiled. Sir Jihan, in the 20 years since she left your world, Queen Nari has met kings and emperors, scientists and warriors, artists and philosophers from 1,000 different species. None of them ever made her laugh the way you did. None of them ever made her feel safe the way you did. None of them ever looked at her and saw just a person instead of a title or a political opportunity. But I'm so ordinary, Jihan protested. That's exactly why she loves you, Commander Kelu said. In a galaxy full of people trying to impress her or use her, you are the only person who ever just wanted to be her friend. As their ship approached, the Federation capital world, Jihan stood at the observation window and watched the planet grow larger. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, cities that sparkled like jewels, and orbital stations that looked like flowers made of metal and crystal. Somewhere down there was Nari, the scared girl who had become a queen. She had, kept her promise and come back for him. Now it was time to see if he could keep his promise too. "Are you ready?" Daehyun asked. Jihan took a deep breath. "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." The boy who had made a simple promise was about to meet the woman who had built an empire while waiting for him to keep it. The palace was bigger than the entire mining colony where Jihan had lived. Towers reached toward the sky like crystal mountains, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. Gardens filled with impossible flowers covered every surface, and waterfalls flowed upward in spirals of dancing light. But Jihan barely noticed any of it. His attention was focused on the woman waiting for him in the throne room. Queen Nari looked exactly as he remembered her, which was impossible. She should have aged 20 years, but she appeared to be the same 18-year-old girl who had kissed him goodbye on New Sejong. Her dark hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her eyes held the same sadness he remembered, mixed now with hope and uncertainty. "Hello, Jihan," she said softly. He wanted to run to her, to hold her and tell her how sorry he was for forgetting her. But there were hundreds of people watching, alien nobles in elaborate costumes, human diplomats in formal suits, guards in shining armor. This wasn't a reunion between childhood friends. This was a state occasion. "Your Majesty," he said awkwardly. Not sure if he should bow, she smiled at his formal tone. "You can still call me Nari. That name belongs to you more than anyone else." Before either of them could say more, a new voice cut through the room. "Your Majesty, if I may interrupt." Ambassador Choi Hyunwoo stepped forward. He was a tall man, in an expensive suit representing Earth's government in the Federation. Jihan didn't like the calculating look in his eyes. "This is a historic moment," Ambassador Choi continued. "The marriage between Queen Nari and Mr. Lee could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Earth would like to discuss the terms of this alliance." Nari's expression grew cold. "Ambassador Choi, this is a personal matter between myself and Jihan. Politics has nothing to do with it." "With respect, Your Majesty," Choi replied, "everything you do affects billions of people. Earth deserves to benefit from this relationship." Jihan felt anger rising in his chest. "I'm not a trade agreement," he said firmly, "and neither is she. Ambassador." Choi looked surprised. "Mr. Lee, surely you understand the opportunity this presents for humanity. The Federation could share technology, provide protection, open trade routes." "I understand that you see Nari as a tool to get what you want," Jihan interrupted. "Just like everyone else probably does." The throne room went quiet. Several alien nobles looked shocked that a simple human would speak so boldly. But Nari was smiling for the first time since Jihan had arrived. "Thank you," she whispered to him. Commander Kalu stepped forward. "Perhaps we should allow His Majesty and the Queen some privacy to reacquaint themselves." As the crowds filed out of the throne room, Jihan and Nari found themselves alone for the first time in 20 years. She looked smaller without all the people around her, more like the girl he remembered. "You kept the same appearance," he said. She nodded. "I thought you might not recognize me if I looked different. And, I wanted to stay the way I was when I was happiest." "You look tired," he observed. She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Being a queen is exhausting. Everyone wants something from me. Every decision affects millions of lives. Every day brings new problems that only I can solve." "Why did you do it? Why did you become a ruler instead of just running away again?" Nari walked to the window that overlooked her capital city. "Because running away doesn't solve anything. My people were suffering under the old government. There were wars, slavery, injustice. I realized that if I wanted to create a place where people like us could be safe and happy, I had to take responsibility. People like us, outcasts, refugees, anyone who doesn't fit into the neat categories that society creates." She turned back to him. "I built this empire for the scared girl who crashed on your planet, and for the kind boy who helped her without asking for anything in return." Jihan walked closer to her. "Nari, I need you to know something. I didn't remember you for 20 years. When I made that promise, I was just a kid who wanted to help a friend. I don't know if I can be the husband a queen needs. She reached out and touched his face gently. I don't need a king, Jihan. I need the person who used to sit with me under the stars and listen to my stories. I need someone who sees me as just Nari, not Queen Nari. Before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Commander Kelu burst into the throne room, his face grim. Your Majesty, we have an emergency. 3 of our outer colonies have gone silent. Our scouts report massive ships of unknown design approaching our borders. Nari immediately transformed from a young woman into a commanding ruler. How many ships? Thousands. They're like nothing we've ever seen. They move in perfect formation and don't respond to any communication attempts. The Void Collective, Nari said quietly. I was afraid this day would come. Jihan had heard stories about the Void Collective, a hive-minded species that had conquered entire galaxies by turning every living thing into part of their collective consciousness. They were supposed to be just legends, cautionary tales to frighten children. They're real? He asked. Nari nodded. Very real. And they've finally found us. Admiral Park Minju's voice came through the communication system. Your Majesty, this is Admiral Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. Our ships are ready to assist in any way we can. Thank you, Admiral, Nari replied. But Earth's 50 ships won't make much difference against the collective. Then we'll make a difference in other ways, Admiral Park said firmly. Humans don't give up easily. As military officers rushed in and out of the throne room, coordinating defenses and evacuation plans, Jihan watched Nari work. She was calm under pressure, making quick decisions that would affect the lives of trillions of beings. She really had become an amazing leader. But he could also see the scared girl underneath the crown, the one who had once run away from problems too big to solve. Nari, he said during a brief lull in the chaos. We need to talk about that marriage promise. She looked at him with surprise. Now? In the middle of an invasion? Especially now, he said. If we're all going to die, I want you to know something. I remember why I made that promise 20 years ago. It wasn't just because I wanted to protect you. It was because even as a kid, I could see who you really were inside. You were brave and kind and smart, and you cared about people even when they couldn't help you back. Jihan, I'm not the same boy I was 20 years ago, he continued, and you're not the same girl. But the reasons I cared about you then, they're still true now, maybe even more true. She stared at him with tears in her eyes. Are you saying you want to marry me? I'm saying I want to try. If we survive this war, if we can figure out how to be together without everyone else trying to use us for politics, then yes. I want to keep the promise I made when we were kids. Nari threw her arms around him, and for a moment they were just 2 people who had found each other again in a dangerous galaxy. But the moment was interrupted by another alarm. Your Majesty, Commander Kelu called out. The collective fleet has reached our first line of defense. The battle has begun. As reports of the fighting reached the palace, Jihan realized that keeping his childhood promise might be the least of his worries. First, they had to survive long enough to have a wedding, and that was going to require all the courage and creativity that humans were famous for. The war room was filled with holographic displays showing the battle raging across 3 star systems. Red dots representing collective ships moved in perfect formations, overwhelming the blue dots of Federation defenders. The enemy advanced, like an unstoppable wave, consuming everything in their path. We've lost the carrion system, Admiral Park Minju reported from her flagship. Their ships just kept coming, no matter how many we destroyed. Our weapons barely seemed to affect them. General Jan Tysik, the Federation's top military commander, pointed at the tactical display. They fight as one mind. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing. We can't surprise them or outmaneuver them because they think as a collective. Jihan studied the battle reports while Nari coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations. The numbers were depressing. The collective had thousands of ships, each one larger than anything in the Federation fleet. Worse, they seemed to adapt quickly to Federation weapons and tactics. What about their weaknesses? Jihan asked. Every system has weaknesses. The hive mind is their strength and their weakness, Commander Kelu explained. They all think the same thoughts, make the same decisions. But if you could disrupt their connection to each other, you'd have thousands of confused individual ships instead of one coordinated fleet, Jihan finished. Have you tried jamming their communications? General Yan shook his head. Their connection isn't technological, it's biological. Some kind of psychic link that we don't understand. Jihan frowned. As an engineer, he believed every problem had a solution. You just had to look at it from the right angle. What if we're thinking about this wrong? Instead of trying to break their connection, what if we use it against them? How? Nari asked. Chaos, Jihan said simply. If they all share the same mind, then they all share the same weaknesses. Confusion in one ship would spread to all of them. Fear in one pilot would affect the entire fleet. Daehyun, who had been quiet until now, suddenly sat up straighter. You want a psychological warfare against a hive mind? Exactly. Humans are unpredictable. We make decisions that don't follow logical patterns. We act on instinct and emotion. If we could get close enough to their ships, if we could board them, and create chaos from the inside. Admiral Park's voice crackled over the communications. That's suicide. Their ships are massive and full of warriors who feel no fear and never retreat. But they've never fought humans before, Jihan pointed out. They don't know how we think. They can't predict what we'll do because even we don't know what we'll do half the time. General Yan looked skeptical. You're talking about small boarding parties against ships the size of cities. Not just boarding parties, Jihan said, his mind racing with possibilities. What if we could combine human unpredictability with Federation technology, create weapons and tactics they've never seen before? Nari was watching him with growing excitement. What do you have in mind? Jihan moved to the engineering station and began pulling up technical specifications. Look at this. Federation weapons are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed to work in predictable ways. Human weapons are crude by comparison, but they're adaptable. What if we jerry-rigged human explosive devices with Federation power sources? He started sketching diagrams on the holographic display. We create bombs that don't explode in predictable patterns. We modify ship engines to move in ways that violate their tactical computers. We teach Federation pilots to fight like humans instead of like machines. Commander Kelu studied the plans. This is highly irregular. Our military doctrine has been developed over thousands of years, and it's not working against the collective, Jihan said bluntly. Sometimes you need to throw out the rule book and improvise. Admiral Park's ship was closer to the front lines and her voice was strained. Whatever you're planning, you'd better do it fast. We can't hold them much longer. Nari made a decision that surprised everyone. I'm going to lead the next assault. Personally, Your Majesty, that's too dangerous. General Yan protested. My people are dying, Nari said firmly. A queen who sends others to fight while hiding in safety is not worthy of the crown. Then I'm going with you, Jihan said. Absolutely not. You're not trained for combat. But I am trained to fix things when they break, Jihan replied. And I'm trained to think of solutions that nobody else would consider. You need someone who can adapt Federation technology in real time during the battle. Daehyun stepped forward. If Jihan's going, I'm going too. Someone needs to watch his back. This is madness, Commander Kelu muttered, but there was admiration in his voice. The plan they developed was indeed madness. Small teams of humans and aliens would approach collective ships using modified shuttles that moved in erratic, unpredictable patterns. They would board the enemy vessels and create as much chaos as possible, while technical teams led by Jihan would plant experimental weapons designed to disrupt the hive mind's coordination. The modified shuttles looked like flying junk heaps, cobbled together from Federation technology and human engineering principles. They had mismatched engines, irregular weapon placements, and navigation systems that deliberately chose random flight paths. They looked like they were built by children, General Yan observed. Exactly, Jihan smiled. The collective's computers won't know how to track them because they don't follow any logical design principles. As the assault fleet prepared to launch, Nari took Jihan aside. She was wearing battle armor that made her look like a warrior queen from ancient legends. "If we don't survive this," she said quietly, "I want you to know that these past few days have been worth waiting 20 years for." "We're going to survive," Jihan said confidently. "And then we're going to have the wedding of the century." "Promise?" she asked, just like she had when they were children. "Promise," he replied, and kissed her the way he had wanted to for 20 years. The battle was unlike anything in military history. Human pilots flew in patterns that made no sense, turning left when logic said, go right, attacking when they should retreat, retreating when they should attack. The collective's hive mind couldn't predict their actions because humans themselves didn't know what they were going to do next. Jihan's jury-rigged weapons worked better than anyone had hoped. Bombs that exploded in spiral patterns instead of spheres. Energy weapons that fired in random bursts instead of steady beams. Jamming devices that broadcast human music and poetry instead of white noise. The psychological impact on the collective was devastating. Their perfect coordination began to break down as confusion and uncertainty spread through their shared consciousness. Ships that had moved in perfect formation began to collide with each other. Weapons that had never missed their targets began firing wildly. "It's working," Admiral Park reported from her command ship. "The collective fleet is in complete disarray." But the battle was far from over. The collective still had thousands of ships, and they were beginning to adapt to the human tactics. The war would be won or lost in the next few hours. Jihan, fighting alongside Nari aboard a massive collective mothership, realized that keeping his childhood promise had turned into something much bigger. They weren't just fighting for their right to be together. They were fighting for the right of all free-thinking beings to exist in a galaxy where individuality and unpredictability were strengths, not weaknesses. The scared girl and the farm boy had become the leaders of a revolution that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The collective mothership shuddered around them as explosions echoed through its corridors. Jihan's improvised devices were working too well. The massive vessel was tearing itself apart as its confused crew fired randomly at everything that moved. "The central processing core is just ahead," Nari shouted over the noise of battle. Her armor was scorched and dented, but her eyes burned with determination. Jihan clutched the modified Federation weapon he had cobbled together from spare parts. It looked like a child's toy compared to the sleek alien technology around them, but it had already saved their lives 3 times during the boarding operation. "If we can plant the disruption device directly into their central nervous system," he called back, "it should spread the chaos to their entire fleet." They fought their way through corridors filled with collective drones, beings from dozens of different species who had been absorbed into the hive mind. The sight broke Jihan's heart. These had once been individuals with their own thoughts and dreams, reduced to mindless slaves of the collective. "We can save them," Nari said, reading his expression. "Once we break the hive connection, they'll be themselves again." The central processing core was a vast chamber filled with organic technology that pulsed like a giant heart. Thousands of cables connected to a massive brain that floated in glowing fluid, the central mind that controlled the entire collective fleet. "That's it," Jihan breathed. "The source of their hive connection." But they weren't alone. A figure stepped out of the shadows, humanoid but clearly alien with silver skin and eyes like black holes. When it spoke, its voice echoed in their minds rather than their ears. "You are the chaos bringers," it said. "The ones who think in broken patterns and spread confusion like a disease." "We're the ones who think for ourselves," Nari replied, raising her weapon. "Something you've forgotten how to do." "Individual thought is weakness," the collective leader said. "It leads to conflict, suffering, loneliness. We offer unity, peace, an end to the pain of being alone." Jihan thought about the scared girl who had crashed on his planet, alone and afraid. He thought about the boy who had promised to protect her even though he had no idea how. Individual thought might lead to pain sometimes, but it also led to love, courage, and the strength to help others. "You're wrong," he said simply. "Being alone isn't the worst thing. Being unable to choose your own path, make your own mistakes, love who you want to love. That's worse than any loneliness." The battle was brief, but intense. The collective leader was powerful, but it fought in predictable patterns while Jihan and Nari moved like the chaotic humans they were. When Jihan's weapon finally connected with the central brain, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The hive mind shattered like glass. Throughout the fleet, collective drones suddenly stopped moving in perfect formation. Ships began firing on each other as their crews, suddenly free to think for themselves, remembered who they had been before absorption. The massive invasion force collapsed into confusion and panic. "Admiral Park, this is Queen Nari." She spoke into her communication device. "The collective fleet is broken. Begin recovery operations for all freed peoples." The journey back to the Federation capital took 3 weeks. During that time, Jihan worked with teams of engineers to design rehabilitation centers for the millions of beings freed from collective control. Many of them were traumatized and confused, but they were alive and free to make their own choices again. "You realize what this means," Nari said, as they watched the rescued people being transferred to medical ships. "We've proven that the collective can be defeated. Other galaxies that have been conquered might be able to fight back now." Jihan nodded. "It's going to change everything, isn't it?" "Everything," she agreed. "The old ways of thinking about warfare, about government, about what it means to be civilized, all of it needs to be reconsidered." The wedding was held on New Sejong, the farming world where they had first met. Jihan's parents, now elderly, but still sharp, were amazed to learn that their son was marrying the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. "She seems like a nice girl," his mother said, watching Nari help serve food to the wedding guests. The Queen of the Stellar Federation was personally making sure that every person at the celebration had enough to eat. "She is," Jihan agreed. "That's why I fell in love with her twice." The ceremony combined traditions from dozens of different species. Humans brought flowers and music, while aliens contributed light displays and harmonic frequencies that made everyone feel peaceful and happy. Ambassador Choi had tried to turn the event into a political showcase, but Nari and Jihan politely refused all requests for formal treaties or trade agreements. "This is a wedding," Jihan had told him firmly, "not a diplomatic summit." When the time came for vows, they chose to repeat the simple promises they had made as children, with one addition. "I promise to love you," Nari said, "to protect you, and to never forget that the person I fell in love with was the boy who saw me as just another kid who needed a friend." "I promise to love you," Jihan replied, "to stand by you, and to never let being an emperor change the fact that you're still the best friend I ever had." The party lasted 3 days. Beings from across the galaxy came to celebrate, not just the wedding but the victory over the collective and the new era of cooperation it represented. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to develop new technologies. Artists from different species collaborated on works that no one culture could have imagined alone. On the final night, Jihan and Nari snuck away from the celebration to sit on the hill where they had made their original promise. The stars looked the same as they had 20 years ago, but everything else had changed. "No regrets?" Nari asked, leaning against his shoulder. "About keeping a promise to the most amazing person I've ever met? Not a chance. Even though I come with 10,000 star systems, 3 billion alien subjects, and a tendency to attract galaxy-threatening invasions." Jihan laughed. "Especially because of that. Life with you is definitely not going to be boring." As Emperor and Empress, they restructured the Federation government to encourage individual creativity and cross-species cooperation. Jihan established engineering academies that taught alien students to think like humans, creatively, unpredictably, and with an emphasis on practical problem-solving. Nari created new laws protecting smaller species and encouraging the kind of cultural exchange that led to innovation. The collective threat wasn't entirely gone. There were other hive minds in distant galaxies, but the Federation was no longer helpless against them. More importantly, the idea of individual freedom had spread to civilizations that had forgotten what it meant to think for themselves. "We did it," Nari said one evening as they reviewed reports from across their empire. Worlds that had been stagnant for centuries were suddenly producing new art, new technology, new ideas. We kept our promise. Jihan looked at their daughter sleeping in her crib nearby. She was a hybrid of human and alien genetics, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn streak. She would grow up in a galaxy where being different was celebrated instead of feared. "Yeah," he said, pulling his wife close. "We kept our promise. And look what happened because of it." The scared girl and the farm boy had become the emperor and empress of the galaxy's greatest civilization. But more than that, they had proven that keeping faith with the people you love, no matter how impossible it seems, could change the universe itself. Their love story had become legend, but they were still just Jihan and Nari, two kids who had promised to take care of each other and had ended up taking care of everyone else as well. Outside their window, ships from 1,000 different worlds traveled the peaceful space lanes of their empire, carrying goods and ideas and dreams between the stars. It was a future built on the simple promise two children had made to each other under an artificial sky, and it was more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to imagine.